ferocious, fantastic, feral, ferris even. These are all words that you could use to describe Froakie and the Fitchburging thereof, because Week 13 brings my team, the Globero Kings, into fatal combat with the Fitchburg Froakies. Now, this is a terrifying team led by an even more terrifying coach and terrifying Josh. That's his full name, legally speaking. So let's get right on into this. I'm excited to bring this one to y'all. Starting right off with the roster here. Starting with Palafin. Now, Palafin is a horrifying mon day in, day out. That jet punch is just horrifying off of that base 160 attack. It can bulk up as well. It's got ice punch and close combat, zen headbutt. All it's got to do to get to these blistering heights is hit a flip turn on you. And I decided to use the Citizen form of Palafin just to not traumatize me by having to look at that superhero. The one good thing I do have on my side for this matchup is that I am in large a sun team, and Palafin does not like its water moves being tapered by that nice bright sun, even though it might be a beach dwelling creature. Next up is somebody who does like my son, and that would be the Triceratops himself, Gouging Fire. Now, this is, of course, a big threat. It can run that dragon dance and just runneth thine pockets all day long. It hits you with that outrage, that breaking swipe, that flare blitz, heat crash, earthquake. It's got the offensive profile, and it's also got good defense. It can run photosynthesis defense if it's feeling quirked up. And it's got that burning bulwark, which can really make your physical attackers start to cry if you get the guesses wrong. Morning Sun as well, just bad news bears for the Sun because it gets 75%, I believe it is. It might be 66, it might be 75% off of a Morning Sun in the Sun. Definitely a scary mon to have to build into with the team that I have drafted this season around. Next up, continuing our threat level. This one's a little bit more passive, but it's nonetheless somebody who is a big thorn in your side. It is Ting Lu. He's got that big bowl on his head, ready to collect all your tears and perhaps turn them into some form of soup or broth. His motives are unknown so far. Ting Lu is a great mon. This thing has a pretty solid typing. Being weak to fighting and fairy isn't exactly ideal, but he's got a ground typing, dark typing, spikes and whirlwind all day, that ruination, earthquake, a little bit of coverage. I think it gets like body press, heavy slam. Not a lot of boosting, but you know what? It's so bulky with that 155 HP that it'll just sit there and put spikes, and then you defog him, and he comes back, and he sits there, and he puts spikes, and it's just, it's a whole thing. Moving on, we got Glow King. At 2 Glow King? Oh my. We have my mascot, Galarian Slowking, on that other side, looking quite dapper today, but it hurts to see a friend staring me down like this, I won't lie. Nonetheless, it is still as good of a mon as it was when I used it in the Season 1. This thing has so much bulk, especially and HP-wise. Its defense is a little lacking, but that's okay. It's got Regenerator on top of pivots and a solid workable special attack, along with Calm Mind and about every single attacking move it could want. It's got Yawn, Thunderwave, Slack Off. It is just a darned good mon. It can kind of do it all. It is nice and easy to throw onto a team comp as special wall, pivot glue, and definitely not something that is fun to build for. Luckily, it does have some exploitable weaknesses in Dark Ghost and Ground, but a mon to be aware of. Kartana with a dex accurate sizing here. Now, Kartana do what a Kartana do. There's not too much dimensionality to it. It's got 181 attack, and it's here to come and show you that. It can maybe Sword Dance if it feels like it. You can hit it with a fire type move. You know the digs. This thing is the paper. He's the cut. We got Pet Turtle over here. Nice Gen 9 mon, nice and brand new here. It's got that lovely ability that's definitely not multi-scale. It's not multi-scale. No, it's Terra Star Shell. Terra Star Storm, it's a signature ability, is a great stab, reliable normal stab, though lacking in PP, so not necessarily that spammable on a Scarf or Specs set, although you could still easily run both of them. And that multi-scale-esque ability is great for getting a Calm Mind or a Rapid Spin off to turn your speed tier nice or get your special attack and special defense really going. On top of lovely defensive stats with a good special attack as well, and a passable typing with just one weakness to fighting and an immunity to ghost as a pure normal type. This thing is good. Did I also mention that it has literally every single coverage move under the sun? Iron Thorns, I promise that gif is moving. I really do, I promise. He's up next. Now, this is a rock electric type, which is typically not good, but this thing can Terra Fairy and Grass to deal with that. And when you put, like, Terra Fairy Terra Blast after a Dragon Dance, this thing is real scary. It's one of the worst Paradox mons, but once you get him going, you don't really feel like he's one of those worst ones. He just feels really good. He's got great moves. Stone Edge and Supercell Slam don't feel bad to have as boosted by Stab as a fairy type. And, yeah, really, another really threatening Dragon Dancer on this team. Mimikyu coming up next. Now, Mimikyu is a good disruptor mon. That Disguise, giving it a free hit, is just so nice and useful. It lets you get that Sword Stance up for those boosted Shadow Sneaks, or Will-O-Wisp, somebody on my team who would rather not be Will-O-Wisp, which is, I suppose, everybody with the physical attackers especially. Good mon, adorable as well. And, Fairy Stab off the bat as well as Ghost Stab. Not a bad thing to have. Mega Bayonet, speaking of Ghost Stab, this thing's got 165 attack, and you know what? It's typically considered to be a bit of a noob trap, but in the hands of Coach Josh, nothing's a noob trap, everything's a gun. So, this thing has also got Prankster. It's got just about everything it could ever ask for to use Prankster with, other than Bulk, of course. But this thing's got Destiny Bond, Encore, Taunt, Thunderwave, Will-O-Wisp, Disable, blah, 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 blah. It's got Pain Split for the recovery. It could Prankster sub. It is certainly another mon that is here to just come and make your day a little bit more confusing. Not necessarily worse, probably worse, but certainly more confusing. Malamar coming in here looking like a damn killer. Josh definitely turned his 3DS upside down for this one. Now, this thing can tear up Poison Fighting and Dark. Real good mon. You know what it does. It comes in at contrary superpowers. It used to be Terra Stellar, but that was let up on because I think just generally you'd rather have that Terra Fighting for the superpower because the defense boost feels a little bit better than one of those attacking stats that you're not using. Pretty weird typing in Psychic Dark. You get that quad weakness to Bug and then a couple of random other things. Immunity to Psychic, which is on top of Resistance. But it's I think of it as a shallow mon. I could certainly be wrong. You kind of only see contrary shenanigans. It does get topsy-turvy to mess with your opponents who are trying to boost sweep. You can just flip that right on its head, and that's just a bad time. So it's definitely got some utility in there. Can run Toxic, of course, seeing as we're in Nat decks. But that's Malamar for you. Hisuian Electrode is rivaling Dragapult with that speed tier at 150. Now, everything else is a little bit lacking, but it makes for a great offensive pivot with that Volt Switch. You can get some solid momentum with it. And, of course, you have Thunder Wave. I think you get Electro Web and Leech Seed for a bit of utility, making it a good disruptor mon that is a pretty solid budget at, I want to say, about 3 points on the draft board. Nice mon. Have considered drafting this fellow in the past. And finally, we got Articuno, the Gen 1 Ice type extraordinaire. One of my favorite mons when I was growing up playing Fire Red as a little mouth-breathing idiot. This mon can Terra Dragon, Flying, and Steel. It's got a couple of boosting options, and Gen 9 has gifted it with such things as Triple Axle. It can run Brave Bird, it can run Hurricane and Blizzard. You can run this kind of either way, which is nice, and I love seeing mons like this that really are not seen to have any competitive viability or niche being pulled into the fray. And you know what? Articuno has been doing some good work this season, so I really respect that. Holistically here, though, this entire team is filled with killers on a coach who knows what they are doing with their Pokemon. It makes for something quite scary. And without further ado, let's get into how I tried to quell my fears by building a team to take on these tyrants. Let's go. First member of our team pulling up for this battle is Tornadus Therian. Now, I liked this guy's access to Grass Knot, which might be funny on a team with a bunch of grass types as we're a Sun team. But I gave him the choice specs mainly for that Grass Knot. Hurricane is there for neutral stab coverage for the most part, and Sludge Wave is there specifically for one mon that we'll cover in a second. The Choice Specs Regenerator and Modest make up this set. You can look at the EVs there, and here are some calcs for you. Now, this Grass Knot can absolutely OHKO a Palafin, and this Tornadus can just barely survive a Banded Jet Punch that is not in the rain. It can also pretty much 2-hit KO any Ting Lu that is not max special defense. The one calc you're seeing there is Leftovers with 252 plus special defense, and it's still a chance to 2-hit KO, while immune to spikes to come in on it, being able to U-turn around it to get that kill if we don't get that 9.8% chance. It just makes it a good mon to bring for these two key threats. This set does, of course, fold into Gouging Fire, especially if we're choice locked into a Grass Knot. That thing can come in for free and get a free Dragon Dance. But that's something that we're going to have to deal with as it comes up. Well, U-turn, as mentioned, just to get out of there if things are hairy or somebody's hard swatches, or we predict that hard swap. It also lets us chip Ting Lu for a fair little chunk. And finally, that Sludge Wave, I had to rack my brain today while coming up with all of this, but it is specifically for a Terra Fairy lead Iron Thorns. That was the big idea, assuming that we could lead this Tornadus, outspeed the Iron Thorns, and get that OHKO if it decides to Terra for fear of, I don't know, Grass Knot or whatnot. So that's what Tornadus is here for. Moving on, we got Big Clodsire here, running Black Sludge and Water Absorb yet again. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. 252 HP and maxed out defense. A little bit of sprinkling of the special defense on there. And we've got Protect, Toxic, Earthquake, and Recover. Now this thing is meant to Toxic Stall. Water Absorb is of course for the scenario where Palafin came, and I was so considering bringing somebody else to be a defensive wall, because with a Sun team, you never are quite sure if Palafin's going to come. It doesn't exactly like the Sun. But that Water Absorb is a nice switch in. Of course, Zen Headbutt and Ice Punch do not make my Clodsire very happy, but it at least gets us a free switch, and then it can maybe let me pivot around from there and maneuver into a more playable kind of space. The Toxic Stall is mainly for these big three. Now, Gouging Fire does like to run Earthquake a lot, but if it's running like double stab, we can kind of survive with our chip healing and recovering and protecting and toxic it down. This is also good for Ting Lu, who is nearly impossible to kill by many of my team members outside of toxic means, because that ramping percent health damage is really good. And then it also provides a way to chip and break Terra Shell for Terrapagos. Earthquake, of course, is here also to help me deal with some of those ground weak mons. You can see three big guys right there: Gouging Fire, Iron Thorns, and Glow King. The damage it does into Glow King is actually nothing to scoff at. I think it can 2 or 3 hit KO. Of course, you're scared about that psychic kind of memery coming out, like a psychic noise would be real bad for poor Clodsire, deleting all of his healing. But that's what Clodsire is here to do. That extra insurance, you're going to see a lot of Palafin popping up in the ways that I'm building here. And Gouging Fire, those two mons are certainly scary. Next up, we got Raging Bolt running the Yakshi Berry. That Yakshi Berry we'll talk about in a second. Protosynthesis as the ability, as always, modest, plus special attack, minus attack. You can look at the EVs there. We're running Thunder Wave and Discharge to hopefully interrupt and slow down that enemy team a little bit. Dragon Pulse on the back, along with Dragon Tail, to perhaps get somebody who's trying to boost out of my hair. I'm not going to let a Gouging Fire Dragon dance in front of me just because it thinks it can. The Yakshi Berry is, of course, for those ice-type moves. It halves the damage of a super effective one, turning any of these shots into neutral. And Palafin's Ice Punch, again, Galarian Slowcoating's Ice Beam, and Articuno's whatever the heck it's going to do, are all prime suspects. There's a lot of ice-type damage that could be coming out there. Discharge and Dragon Pulse, as mentioned, they hit these guys super effectively, and Discharge also lets me spread Paralysis, which would be great. Of course, Palafin is a Prio abuser, so we'd have to be rolling that 30% dice to be getting that to be good. But it also does interrupt like a Choice Band Wave Crash really well. if it's trying to go for more damage and less prio. And finally, we're not running Thunderclap, but it still seems like a very logical move to bring if Palafin is on the other side. Now, I believe the Thunderclap will fail if Jet Punch is used, because you actually get out prioed and out spedded, causing Thunderclap to fail, which is why it's not on this. However, if you're Josh, hopefully you see Raging Bolt and you say, oh god, I have to play my poor Palafin off of this creature, strangely. Of course, you might just bring Special Defense or an Assault Vest and Ice Punch me into Oblivion, but that's neither here nor there, and that's why we have the Yakshi Berry. Next up, Ogrepon Hearth Flame with the Mask, Mold Breaker, and a Jolly Nature, ramping up that attack and speed about as high as they can go, and we're running a Swords Dance set today, and that Swords Dance is why it's always there. It's just so that that Ivy Cudgel can bonk as hard as physically possible, and it, as mentioned with Clodsire's Earthquake, can hit a couple of really good targets. It's some nice coverage to have. Ivy Cudgel just deletes that Kartana, no questions asked, and this guy doesn't typically like to run a Sash. Resisting both of Kartana's stab types is also nice, so it's a good mon to have for Kartana insurance, because if you don't give that thing the respect it deserves, it will just slice you to pieces. Trailblaze on here, it's not going to pop up, but I will take a second, is nice to have for those speed razors like Gouging Fire. Having a +1 speed does just give me a little bit more time, while Gouging Fire might want to use One Dragon Dance to outspeed me. And of course, here we got the Stomping Tantrum, mainly for these two. It can, I believe, 2-hit both of those without the boost, which we don't have any way to actually unlock that double base power Stomping Tantrum by failing a move. But it's still good coverage to have with 75 base power. Slitherwing is here next, running a yummy citrus berry, and the first impression, the Earthquake, Temper Flare, and Will-O-Wisp. Now, first impression is here to be able to outspeed without prio that Mr. Palafin, and if we chip it down some other way and need to take it out, we can first impression, and that's done and dusted, we don't really have to worry. Or we get to hit somebody with a big 90 stab bug attack on the Swigshin. Of course, Gouging Fire doesn't mind that, but again, neither here nor there. It also hits Ting Lu for over half, which is just grand. Will-O-Wisp can cripple all of these physical attackers. Nobody wants a Will-O-Wisp Palafin or Iron Thorns. It just makes their lives horrible. It makes Kartana go from a Mon that's incredible to a Mon that is ineatable, though actually I wouldn't recommend that eating it either way. And the other guys pictured, of course, don't appreciate it either. Temper Flare, another piece of Kartana insurance, boosted by the son of Torkoal. If I choose to bring him, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I'll give you a hint. But Torkoal is coming this week. Anywho, next up, speaking of that, I could not figure out whether I wanted to bring Torkoal or Hoopa as my last one. I was sitting like 3 minutes out from my match against Coach Josh, and I was like, I don't know. Because Torkoal, of course, invites Gouging Fire to absolutely sweep my team, but I didn't really want to bring Hoopa for some reason. I just think I was feeling uninspired by building it. I couldn't think of something that felt really good into the enemy team. So I hit up my buddy Dan, who does not really do Pokemon. I think he's played the cartridges, but definitely isn't a competitive Pokemon guy. And I had my fate determined by good old Dan the Duke over here. So we are running Torkoal for our last Mon. And I think it's fitting against the team with Pet Turtle to run my own Pet Turtle here. We are running an eject button, which is not pictured. Perhaps I'll put that in post here. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little bit. Anywho, Drought and a Bold Nature. You can look at those EVs there. Clear Smog is, of course, there. Rapid Spin, Lava Plume, and Toxic. Now, Toxic, same reason it was on Clodtire. It can just make those bad boys a little bit more manageable now. While prepping, I was considering the fact that Gouging Fire could be a very big problem for this. But surely we don't have to worry about this. No. Same with Ting-Lu or Terrapagos, though I don't see them running sub as often, so I don't know if that's as big of an issue. Clear Smog, again, for some of the same suspects as above, but just to deal with those boost sweepers, we are max bulk on the defensive side, so Terrapagos might be able to muscle through us with an Earth Power, but those other two, hopefully, no matter what, we can survive a hit and get it done. Maybe a Iron Thorn Stone Edge would end me no matter what, but it is what it is. And finally, Rapid Spin is really good into any matchup with a Tinglu because you just want to take care of those spikes. That is what he is the best at doing. He is the best in the game at putting those spikes down, and I don't want to let him do his thing unimpeded. So Torkoal's here to impede all over his shizbiz. And with that, I believe that wraps up my team, and we can get right on into the replay. Staring down the enemy team, we see the Gouging Fire and no Palafin, which means that a whole chunk of prep is gone to naught. Because having Palafin not show up makes a whole lot of sense. We are a Sun team after all. But it is tough seeing as we have those ways to deal with it baked in regardless. So that's a bit of potential that could have been put somewhere else. Moving on, we got Gouging Fire, of course. Makes sense bringing Gouging Fire to the place with free sun. Take your dog to the beach day, it is. Terra Captains, Articuno, and nobody else. Just Articuno for the Terra Captains. The Turtle, Terrapagos, Tinglu, Mega Bannet, and Galarian Slowking. Brutus himself. Without further ado, we're just going to get into it. See what it is. Now we get the lead of a Gouging Fire into Torkoal. You'll remember I mentioned in the video earlier that I wanted, ideally, Mr. What's his name? Iron Thorns to be here because Josh has shown a penchant for leading with Iron Thorns, but this time we get the other, much deadlier Dragon Dancer from his team. So that's certainly something to be thinking about. Now, mashed potatoes here. This was filmed around Thanksgiving, and it's now February. Man, time flies. Because I remember this one clear as day. Torkoal giving the sun, giving the photosynthesis straight away to this Gouging Fire and boosting fire type moves for him. And we're expecting a Dragon Dance here, and we press Toxic. And as mentioned in the video, we get the worst case scenario. We get a Toxic failing because of the substitute. Now, Torkoal cannot break this sub with any ease. We only have Clear Smog and Lava Plume as attacks, and Gouging Fire just shrugs those off. Clear Smog because it's 40 base power. And even in the sun, a nice quad resist to fire. This is quite possibly one of the worst first turns that somebody can possibly have. I have turned this Gouging Fire by my own hand into a god-danged monster. But we'll see what we can do about it. Now, the Dragon Dance comes out, and I try to Clear Smog. I think I was hoping that it would go through the substitute and still have the secondary effect go. Or I was trying to hope that I could break the substitute with 2 Clear Smogs. I forget the exact line, but I remember I was freaking out crazy style because of this scenario. It's just not looking good. Nobody wants to show up to try and challenge this guy. Clodsire comes out, and now this is pretty much a sack because EQ or Flare Blitz was going to kill it, and a massive amount of recoil shows that this guy is leftovers. So it's got healing behind that substitute as well. It is a good chunk of damage, but that's one Mon just completely gone. My poor Mudhopper. We want to keep Torkoal alive because he is the best at keeping this Gouging Fire at bay with full physical defense. Of course, a Earthquake makes that go from pretty good at managing it to not very. Slitherwing is going to come out here, and now Torkoal back out. We're trying to goad out another Flare Blitz just to stall out Sun turns. And this entire time, first off, these turns are taking me like 5 to 10 minutes. We're watching a replay that makes them very, very fast compared to how this game was actually played. So just keep that in mind. I'm spending many, many minutes freaking out like I'm NASA control on that one place where the teacher died in the rocket. I think they call that Challenger. But yeah, this is a catastrophe on the level of an American rocket exploding for me. Pet Turtle comes out here. Another substitute is dirty work there. If Slitherwing had close combated, we would have gotten that defense down and we would have just been doomed. Of course, Slitherwing would have been doomed to a Flare Blitz no matter what. We're not sashed. We're not whatever the name of the Fireberry is. So this is just not looking good. Mashed Potatoes is, as I said, about to run away with the game. We're going to have to see what we can do here. We're going to have to get creative now. Torkoal eats that Earthquake, but not like a Thanksgiving meal. It's getting eaten like a brick. That hurts bad. And this guy's got a lot of defense. This is max invested on 140 defense, max HP. That's just not good. We swap to Slitherwing again. We'll get that photosynthesis up, and then the sunlight goes away. So now the calcs are a little bit more manageable. Because of the clear smog damage, even on a resist, that first impression is allowed to break the sub. And the worst case scenario here for me is watching Gouging Fire just sub up again, because then I'm doomed. I get Flare Blitz, and this thing sweeps my entire team. This is what I was expecting to happen. I thought that this was fully over at this point. But we get a Dragon Dance here, and that's actually not as bad. Now, of course, the attack raise is not good. The speed raise, not good. You don't like to see it, but it's better than the alternative, which is a sub, another Dragon Dance, and then a Flare Blitz, where that sub might stay up depending on defense investment. Regardless, that Flare Blitz deletes my poor bug. Poor Slitherwing. I should have done you better. The thingy ticks down. The recoil ticks down. Leftovers ticks up. Raging Bolt comes out here, and +2 attack, super effective damage into my into my Raging Bolt. We hang on by just a thread, and we Dragon Pulse. Now we have 2 Mons down and 1 Mon at the very brink of life here. But Gouging Fire is gone, and I was looking, I was imagining, I was visualizing that 6-0 on my record. So this, oh my god, it was like landing a man on the moon. This was Neil Armstrong saying, "One giant leap, one single step for mankind." I was pogging out. Ting-Lu coming out here, of course, resistant. We just go for the sack, and we get the rocks, so Raging Bolt is essentially a dead man walk in here. If we swap out, this isn't boots, so we're gone. If we get Whirlwinded, we're gone. I have no hazard removal on this team other than Torkoal, who doesn't like stealth rocks. Dragon Pulse again, just try to get it down. So there's one of the worst. I mean, every mon other than Raging Bolt here is weak to rocks. So this is no good. I think in prep, I only really expected spikes out of Ting-Lu. I forgot that it gets stealth rocks as well, which is a really horrible oversight. But that's how it goes. I'm not here to be hyping myself up. I'm honest. I forget that mons get moved sometimes. But Ting-Lu does his Thing-Lu. We get our Ogrepon in here, and we don't have like Wood Hammer, which could probably dispatch it, but it might force a switch if we're lucky into something that resists it, like Articuno or Glowking. Ivy Cudgel here, 25%, and we get Whirlwinded, which is still horrible. Poor Torkoal at 2%, 3%, or a little bit better than the milk percentage here, not 2%. Sunlight back up. Thankfully, Gouging Fire is not here. We get taunted into a rapid spin. We should be able to outspeed this next turn, and while we can't use any of our status moves that we have, we can absolutely Lava Plume through the sun here. Stealth Rocks go back up. Lava Plume here for 20%. The swap to Banette, which is interesting. It's probably implying that this Ting-Lu is not running Earthquake or an attacking move. Maybe Ruination on the back there. I don't believe we've seen it yet. So that would be the most logical conclusion there. But Mega Banette comes in here. A little bold, but we haven't shown... Actually, we've shown everything, and we have not shown a single bit of Will-O-Wisp. I never toxic the Ting-Lu back there just because I was assuming that I was going to die, so I was trying to go for the most aggressive play possible, which perhaps toxic would have been, because with how many turns that was, we probably would have killed it out if we had toxic at the beginning. But you know what? Getting those hazards as gone as I could be, and as I said, Ting-Lu puts those hazards out, they get cleared, and then they come back, as we just saw. All of that digressed. We're in the spot we are now. We maybe could have played that a little bit better, but I'm just glad to get Gouging Fire off the board. That was winning the game to me at that point. All of this is just a bonus. Our Rapid Spin for some reason. Perhaps expecting a swap. That's kind of a very strange move. I don't know what I was thinking there. Regardless, we get one of the craziest plays, perhaps of all time, about to come in. You should really buckle yourself in for this crazy sequence. Now, Prankster substitute. Lava Plume fades. Sun goes away. Substitute. Plume fades. Substitute. Plumes fades. I have no clue what's going on here. Poltergeist goes off, but we used our eject button earlier while fighting the Gouging Fire, so it can't work. And it does not kill Torkoal. Torkoal has been sitting here at 3% for a minute and a half, colloquially speaking. And we Lava Plume, and we get it dead. Hilarious sequence from any way you slice it. I respect what Josh was going for. I don't understand it, but I dig it so hard. I can't explain it. I remember Josh did, in fact, explain it, but I'll have to pull that up and perhaps put a little cut in here. Or maybe I'll just, cut all of this out. Who knows? Moving on, regardless. Turtle versus Turtle. I was hoping to get this. We're getting a Turtle off now. Of course, their Turtle beat my Turtle with a rapid spin, getting that speed. And now Ogerpon does get outsped here by Terrapagos with a speed boost. We do have Trailblaze to try and break it. And I think the best line is to Trailblaze, get the speed boost, and regain the speed advantage, and then take it and start Ivy cudgeling and hoping for the kill. Swords Dance is a really risky play because we could just get Sludge Bombed or Terra Star Stormed and sent back to the Stone Age. So we'll see how it goes. The rocks, of course, not good. Ivy Cudgel first into the Terra Star Storm, and actually we do outspeed it, which isn't a bad gamble, but dying there is not grand. I think depending on bulk versus attack, that was actually a roll for Ogerpon to live. This is scratching a very hazy memory here of a replay that happened 4 months ago. So you're going to have to bear with me if you go into the calc and you see that I'm in fact incorrect. But you know what? If you've got that kind of diligence, good for you. You put that in the comments and tell me. I, for one, am lazy. Tornadus Theory coming out, hoping to one-shot with that Hurricane, and we do. And this is not a bad spot for Tornadus, where we can swap up our Choice Specs move. The only real issue is that there's just going to be no breaking these walls in Tinglu and Glow King without being able to swap our move up a couple of times. Both of their powers combined can really just make today a horrible day for Mr. Tornadus T. Articuno comes out, and I think this is another one where it could have been a roll for Articuno to live, heavily dependent on what was investment. I forget what I was calcing it with, probably max special bulk, because you gotta run those paranoia calcs at all times. Terra Dragon here, and we missed the Hurricane, so I guess we're going to get no information here as a Walksher in the future. And Agility, which is no good there. Triple Axle, 1, 2, doesn't even need all 3, it's gone. And now Raging Bolt is already dead. As we said, dead man walking. We send him out, and that's game. Honestly, after Gouging Fire got such a good setup, I mean, looking at those calcs, literally everything in the early game except Torkoal got absolutely one-shot by Gouging Fire. It is a miracle that thing did not 6-0 me. Getting 3 mons down after that bad of a start, that bad of a turn 1, that was all the Pogtonium I needed. Coach Josh, an amazing match, an amazing team. This was a very scary one. I was worried about this matchup weeks in advance because I knew it was going to be a toughie. Beautiful team. Love Glow King over there. Gouging Fire, Pet Turtle. A bunch of good mons who are also strong. Really respectable draft work there. That's all I got for you this week. Tune in next week for number 14. And that's all I got. Bye.